tax law changes, inflationary changes. So stay tuned. We're going to go through all these very important economic changes. While we don't have any complete resolve because some of the stuff hasn't been voted on, we're going to at least cover with you what has been done in the government so far. So without any further ado, let's cover the vaccine update, inflation, tax changes, mega IRAs, Roths. These are new ones on our list today. Housing, stock market, and we're going to cover the econ map. Okay, vaccine tracker. We're up to 210 million. First doses, it's about 52% of the population has been double dosed with either Pfizer or Moderna. And so, again, we are on the right track. Whether or not you believe in the vaccine or not, it is at least helping with some of the reduction of deaths. It doesn't stop you from getting sick, but thank God it does help with the reduction of deaths. Unfortunately, because of some of the virus variants, we have a 25% increase in the number of new virus cases just since May. And this is going back and forth. There's some studies but they're conflicting. One out of the FDA is showing that, the booster shot doesn't help. And then there's another small study out of Israel that's showing that the booster shot does help. We're going to have to see what that looks like, the efficacy, somewhere around 8 to 10 months. And we're getting close to that right now. So I think they are going to go into that testing of that FDA booster shot. Well, let's talk about inflation. We've been talking about this now probably since the virus started, or at least until it reopened after the vaccine came out. We have got a major shortage in our supply chain, or a break in our supply chain. Again, it's temporary. We're starting to see it repair, but most likely because of the flare-up in the virus and the variants, we probably will not see any kind of settling down of this flash inflation until at least the first quarter of next year. And unfortunately, what that does, as you can see here, we have the American flash inflation. Ours is the red line, and you can see our inflation has gone much higher than everybody else's in the world, and our spending power has gone way up comparatively to everywhere else in the world. And if you wonder why that's the case, well, you look at the trillions of dollars that our country has pumped into our economy from a government standpoint. Now, obviously, we have a very robust economy. We have the highest spending per capita anywhere in the world. And this is what we do. Americans spend money. There's a very different culture in Europe. There's a very different culture in Eastern Europe. So we spend money. So we have a flash inflation going on right now. And then you add into that child care tax credit at $300 per month per person or per child. You add in, now they're going to talk about the fourth stimulus check between age 62 and 65 or above, based upon your income. And now we look at this and look at what our inflation is doing to Social Security. We're anticipated to go up above 6% for the first time in 40 years. This will be one of the biggest increases. And just compare that to what happened in 2021. That was based upon 2020's inflation, and we only went up by 1.7%. So flash inflation does have an effect on a lot of things. Now let's get into the meat of what's just happened this week. I told you last week we would cover some of this. Look at what happened here. The House Ways and Means Committee approved already 2.1 trillion in new taxes to corporations and individuals. They're not done yet. So don't get too relaxed that this is only half of what they planned on spending. They're planning on spending $4 trillion. So they're not done with the tax cuts the tax increases. You remember I had said this over and over again. It's that slippery slope philosophy. The minute that they start passing taxes, they ease it in, people get used to it, then they can pass more taxes. This is what they've always done, right? I don't believe any politician on either side of the aisle. All of them have increased taxes. If they haven't increased taxes somewhere, they've increased as a fee or a penalty or a surcharge or something else somewhere else. So let's talk about really what is on the table for change. Well, number one, this is a Democratic Congress and Democratic Senate, right? Well, it's 50-50, but we know that Kamala Harris can tie break it. And we also know that a lot of these changes are being pushed through under the guise of the Reconciliation Act. And this way, they don't have to get 60 votes in Senate. They can pass it by 50 votes in the Senate. And even if there's a tie, then obviously Kamala Harris can vote for that tiebreaker, so we know which way that will go. There's only really two people that are on the fence right now. There's Senator Manchin from, I think it's West Virginia, and then we also have a moderate Democrat from Florida, and both of them are not in agreement right now with some of these tax changes. So the good thing is that we have some pushback in certain areas, but most of these things I anticipate on going through. One of those is the raising of the SALT limit. The SALT is state and local income tax. This primarily affects Democratic states and Illinois, New York, California, those states that have excessively high income taxes and property taxes. And as you know, the limitation before was a $10,000 maximum deduction. And so if you were living in New York and you're paying, or California, you're paying $30,000 in property tax and you're paying another $100,000 a year in income tax, you're limited to a whopping $10,000 deduction per year. That came about in the 2017 Trump Tax Reform Act, but they're looking to get rid of that. The corporate income tax. It's been an agreement, and I think this will go through. It's a moderate compromise, if you want to call it that. It's going from 21 to 26.5%. Goldman Sachs produced a report saying that they think it will affect the stock market by 5%. I think that's more of a scare tactic, especially when you've got $5 trillion sitting on the sidelines in cash. And remember the velocity of money philosophy. The velocity of money says that even though they tax us more, that money doesn't just get burned up. What it does is it goes to higher government employee pensions, higher government employee salaries. Then they have all of these special interest groups. It's a shifting. So if certain dollars were going towards where the public could decide where they went, meaning lower taxes mean a faster velocity of money, because typically it will be spent on consumer goods and retail and services and travel. But the minute that you increase the taxes and they bring more tax dollars in, then what happens is the government, not the public, decides where it's going to be spent. So now if it's spent on infrastructure, if it's on roads and schools, it just means teachers will earn more. Teachers will have a bigger pension. So you have to look at the shift. It's not like the money gets burned up. You just got to follow where that shift goes to. Now, individuals, again, individuals are going to pay up to 39.6%, 3.8% for incomes over $400,000. But again, keep in mind, depending upon what state you live in, you could be paying 65 to 70%, depending upon what state you live in. Capital gains, and this is the big one here. Capital gains tax rate right now in the House Ways and Means Committee, they've agreed upon a 25% capital gains tax on any gains recognized after September 13th. You remember my big worry was they were going to push this back to January 1st of this year. It is still a retroactive tax no matter which way you cut it, because they haven't passed this. It hasn't gotten through the Senate. It may not get through the Senate for another month or 2 months. So their deadline is September 13th. And of course, what they did is they backdated it so that there's really no planning opportunity. All right. So at least, what we did internally is we held off on any gains harvesting until we really knew what this would look like. And again, 20 to 25 is certainly better than 20 to 39. That's what we were worried about. Now, it depends on also where you live. And I'm going to show you a chart in a little bit. Depending upon where you live, you could be paying 45 to 50% in capital gains tax rates. So if you're living in a tax-free state, it's not as bad. But California, New York, Illinois, Hawaii, etc., it can get pretty nasty. It depends on if your state has a capital gains tax or not. So it also depends upon what your income is. And remember, the way the calculation goes is they're going to include the gain in your adjusted gross income. If your adjusted gross income exceeds a certain threshold, then what will happen is you'll bump up to a higher capital gains tax rate, especially if you're in a taxable state. So you have to be careful on a sale of a business, on a sale of a property, on a sale of a large stock position, closely held positions. There's a big one going to be a limit on aggregate pension plans above $5 million. Now, I know, the majority of people sit back and go, well, I probably won't have $5 million. You'd be surprised. Because a pension plan that might name a spouse or that might name a child as a beneficiary. Even though you don't own that pension plan, I'm looking that the Congress is going to assess a present value. Present value means if you're receiving an income stream, you can calculate the present value of that income stream based upon your life expectancy and based upon interest rates. Right now, present values are very low because interest rates are low. If interest rates go back to 5, 6, 7%, then we can see that the present value of a pension plan it would be much easier for it to exceed $5 million. So we've got to be careful of this. Also, it depends upon if you purchased life insurance inside of your pension plan, whether you have made sure that the death benefit will bypass the pension plan and go to your beneficiaries directly, or some people have done this incorrectly. They'll include the life insurance inside of the pension plan. Now, the benefit of having the life insurance is that inside the pension plan is you can get the current tax deduction on the premiums, but the downside is if you plan it incorrectly, they're going to tax that as an excess contribution. So one of the things they're talking about doing is lowering the income level for NIT tax. NIT tax is that additional income tax, and they're also talking about lowering the limit for the Medicare tax. Now, if you remember when Biden ran for office, the big play was nobody will pay more taxes unless you are making more than $400,000. Again, as I said back then, they were very nebulous on the terminology of that. Is that your annual income, or could it be that you make more than $400,000 in a single gain by selling a house, selling stock positions, selling a business, and then you will pay more tax in that given year? So it is apparent that what I said back in November of last year it's true. So they're not counting just annual income, because most people go, well, I don't make $400,000 a year. I got a salary of $150,000 a year, whatever it is. They're counting all of your income. Now, that also means that in the year of death, if certain positions are liquidated, it's very easy that the estate could pay the top income tax rate based upon all those accelerations of income in the year of death. Okay, estates, here's a big one. Now, to kind of go backwards, for many years, since the beginning of my practice, 40 years ago, 38, 39 years ago, there used to be a $600,000 estate tax limit. That was all the way up until about 2001, 2002. And then what happened was they started gradually step laddering it up to where it got to $5.7 million. And then when Trump tax reform came into place, it doubled it to $11 million. So that meant that if you were married, you could basically escape estate taxes. Well, your kids could, because you got to die to activate estate taxes. But your kids could, escape the estate taxes as long as you were under $11 million. Well, now what they're doing is they're bringing it back to 5.7 next year. Now, remember how the estate tax works. A lot of times people go, well, I don't have $5.7 million sitting in my accounts. It's not 5.7. It's wedding rings. It's golf clubs. It's furniture. It's jewelry. It's a house. It's a present value of an income stream. It is investments. It is your retirement plan. So all of those things added together, if it exceeds $5.7 million, there's a 45% tax that's assessed on anything in excess of that. So now we have to be very careful of who owns life insurance, who owns real estate. Do we get those out into outside tax-exempt trust? Now, a tax-exempt trust is very different than a family revocable trust. Okay, here's a positive. Tax break up to $12,500 for electric or hybrid vehicles. Here's a downside. So talk about over-regulation. We know that this is just party central. If it's Democrats that are running the party or running the country, it's going to be over-regulation. If it's the Republicans, sometimes it's under-regulation, meaning they're not watching over certain things well enough, right? Can I say 2008 all over again, right? Not enough watchdogs. What is the happy balance? I don't know. But I know that this new law that they're about to put in place here, it is going to be a massive hassle. Banks and financial institutions now report money flows. The Democrats want to make sure they see every dollar you take out of an account or you put into an account. So financial institutions will be required to report ins and outs. They don't report that now, and they only have to report if you bring in $10,000 of cash or more. They have to report that. But now they're talking about any inflows and outflows of at least $600 will be reported to the IRS. Okay. Here's a good thing. Step up in basis. That was a big concern of mine. And the loss of the 1031 exchange, they're dead. There's not enough support, even in the Democratic Party, to push that through. Okay. Last, removal of the Roth backdoor. This is where if you did not qualify for a Roth contribution, we would add it to a non-deductible IRA and then convert it to a Roth. We're also reverting back to income limitations on Roth conversions. Basically, what they want to do is they want to keep your money in the retirement plan. Why? Because now with the new Secure Act that passed in January 2020, they get to tax that under an aggressive, accelerated tax method. So now they want to go back to the way it was back in 2010, 2011, I think it was, where there was a limitation back then, and they want to bring this back, of $100,000 of adjusted gross income. If you had greater than $100,000 of adjusted gross income, you would not be allowed to convert to a Roth. Okay. Now, again, all of these still have to get through the Senate, but this is where we stand based upon what we call the House and Ways and Means Committee in the House, what they call their initial markup of the tax rules. So let's talk about this capital gains tax, because I said I would show you state by state. As you can see here, the federal and state average might be 36. If you add on the penalties and the surcharges based upon how much in the capital gain and income that you earn. But you can see here, if you're in California, you could be paying up to 45% in capital gains tax. That's pretty substantial. Might be time to move out of California. There's a lot more tax-friendly states than California, right? You can always visit, just don't visit too long, because they'll think that you live there and they'll try to tax you. Mega IRAs, again, this is one on the chopping block where they want to take away anything in excess. Apparently, this Congress feels that no one needs more than $5 million in their IRA, and they want to tax the excess. And again, the Roth backdoor conversions are going to be gone, and they're going to revert to income limitations like it was back in 2010. All right, Roaring 20s playbook. Hey, remember I've been going through this with you, and the virus hits the world, the lockdown happens. This is what happened in the 1919 Spanish flu epidemic. And then the spending spree hit, and that lasted for about 5 to 6 years before the great stock market crash. But right now, we still have a supply chain restricted because we can't go out and spend. I don't know if you've tried to order a couch. We tried to order one of these little Google home cameras. Everywhere is sold out. Why? There's a backlog of chips. And the reason is that sometimes it takes 5 to 7 months to grow a chip. And some of the chip manufacturers in China have been shut down. Now, the good news is that there's a couple new plants that are going to be springing up. There's one, a $9 billion plant planned for Texas. There's a $7 billion plant springing up for Shanghai. Listen, we went through this once before. If you look back about 15, 18 years ago, there was one major plant in the world that would grow the LCD screens. They have to grow those things. They're organically grown. And there was a fire there, and it put computers out of business for a long time selling LCD screens. And so what happened? We humans just adapted. We created more factories in more countries to offset the risk, because this way, it's not central in one place. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. And now we're seeing the same thing. So this is good. This is a good thing. Short-term pain will lead to a long-term gain. Okay? And again, just like with the stock market crash of 1929, there were more millionaires minted in that period of time per capita than in any other period of time. So again, right now, if somebody said, are you worried about the stock market crashing? Not at all. I'm just worried about the supply chain. We're going to have some volatility based upon two things. One is going to be supply chain. Two is going to be the virus. And they are interconnected. Once those things solve each other or they are fixed, wow, rocket ship, major explosion in the stock market for a period of time until people run out of all this extra cash that they're sitting on. And if you look, here's the Roaring '20s repeat, right? Right now, we have the fastest recovery of any developed economy in the world. And again, a lot of that has to do with all the money that was pumped in by the government. All right, let's look at the S&P 500. As of yesterday, we're still up 21% for the year. And I think that that's a pretty good rate of return. But I think there's a lot more punch in that market, especially with all the cash sitting on the side. I will not be changing my econ map. I'm still right on track for the exact dates and times, real estate, stock market, taxes, all these things. These things I was on version 7. Again, I kept changing versions based upon the algorithms that we built to monitor the investment portfolios. This version has been around since February, March, and there hasn't been anything fundamentally that has changed that would change these versions. If there is, such as the supply chain gets pushed out even more, we have more variants, whatever it is, we have reactions from the vaccines, then that will change this. But right now, we're still right on track. We're tracking about 85 to 91% of that original algorithm that we built out. All right, actions to take right now. Move your IRA to a profit-sharing plan. Consider how you might be paying for life insurance and long-term care insurance. Refinance. Get ready for this real estate opportunity that might be coming up in the first or second quarter of next year. And consider gifting to kids, either conditional, restricted, or windfall gifting strategies. Hey, before I wrap up today, if you haven't already joined or subscribed to our YouTube channel, I created a new channel. So there's actually 2 channels that we're running on right now. If you're a high net worth person and you want to follow all the advanced things that we're doing, then you want to stay on the H&H Retirement Design and Management channel. But if you have kids, you have grandkids, or maybe you don't have a high net worth, we created another channel which I'll be producing educational content on that's in a different context. It's not so much if you have $5 million. If you have maybe $100,000, this other channel might be more appropriate. But you can join both channels if you want. Right now, the content will be the same, but somewhere around the end of the year, beginning of next year, I'll split that off and start building a different kind of content for those people that are still trying to grow their money. Remember, H&H Retirement Design and Management is mainly designed for those people that are in the distribution or they're close to the distribution phase, and Wiser Retire is really structured for those people that are in the accumulation phase. But all you got to do is just go on YouTube and just say, Ken Himmler on Wiser Retire, or you can just say Wiser Retire YouTube channel, and you'll find this here. You just hit the little red button there and you subscribe. Or if you want to subscribe to the H&H channel, just go onto YouTube and just Google search, just say H&H Retirement on YouTube, and you'll find this. Hit the red button. Look, the advantage of subscribing is when I start producing all of this additional content, you'll have access to it, and you'll also be notified when it's uploaded, versus trying to go in there and search. This way, hey, if I produce something, a piece of content that might really be applicable to you, you'll get a little notification. You can decide whether you want to go watch it or not. All right, with that in mind, I want you to have a really good weekend. And if you have any questions, give the office a call. It's 844-702-1040. Have a great weekend.